and welcome to the walkthrough video for Big Rusty Drums. The kit we sampled was made by Zygmunt Szpaderski in Poland decades ago, and we paid the equivalent of $111.68 for it. He made thousands of kits in his one-man workshop and made his own hardware, lugs, and even heads, so it's as unique a drum kit as you'll ever find sampled. It's not the most refined kit in the world, but it's sure got character. The virtual instrument also has some unusual features which I'll explain throughout the video, like little percussive sounds you heard at the start. As you can see, there's sure a lot of controls. The sound at the start of the video was with everything at default, but here's a very meat and potatoes drum pattern with a few different settings. This is with the close mics on the kick and snare only, and overheads on everything. Sound like drums recorded live with 4 microphones for basically a garage indie sound. This is a less natural, more hyped up, tight pop or hip hop setup, the kind of tone I personally like. And this is a huge, deep, epic sound. These big drums are really good for that. And if you want to get really weird, you can. If all these controls seem overwhelming, there's also a basic kit instrument with just kick, snare, 3 toms, hi-hat and 2 cymbals, and there are also separate instruments for each kit piece category, a kick instrument, a snare instrument, and so on. Taking things one kit piece at a time, the kick was sampled both dampened and undampened. The snare folder is more than 1,000 samples by itself, so yeah, I really like the snare a lot and I sampled in a lot of different ways. We got 4 hit types with sticks. First, side stick, center hits, edge hits, rim shots, brushes have hits, digs, 3 types of stirs, and digs can also be used to accent stirs. And there's also the sound of the brush being picked up from the head. We got more little noises like that sampled in various places, which we'll get to later. There are also center hits with mallets. Something I should mention here is that kits sampled with sticks, brushes, and mallets will usually let you switch for the whole kit, but a lot of drummers in the real world don't like brushes on cymbals and toms that much, so they'll use a brush in one hand on the snare and the stick in the other hand for everything else sometimes. So we'll let you switch the sticking separately for each kit piece category, which also means you can do mallet rolls on the toms while using the stick on the snare or whatever. Then we did some unusual things. We recorded center hits and rim shots with the stick, with the tambourine laying on top of the snare, and the harder the hit, the more it jingles. Another studio drummer trick to get a fat snare sound is to plop a small tom on top of the snare. Then we got side sticks, center hits, and rim shots with that, and it's really fat. Of course, we had to grab a small tom from another kit, because on this kit, everything is big everywhere. So yeah, the whole kit is big and might only be rusty in spots, but it's all big, and the toms are the most ridiculously oversized part. So to take this to the hilt, we also took a kick drum from another kit, turned it sideways, and made an extra giant tom out of it. Here are all 4. The toms are also sampled with brushes, and the 18-inch floor tom is also getting digs, stirs, and the brush being picked up. Of course, big toms sound great with mallets, so that's probably the best part here, and especially for playing rolls. This kit came with a Palmas Hi-Hat made in a government factory in about the same era, but we sampled a nice Sabian hi-hat instead, because there's one thing life's too short for it, spending 3.5 hours recording hi-hat samples that are going to sound lousy. This hi-hat has a deep, dark sound, it's a good match for the drums sonically, and of course it was recorded in the same room with the same mics, so it really fits. It's got 6 degrees of openness and both shank and tip hits. There's also foot splashes and foot checks. And we even have hi-hat cymbal return noises where the hi-hat top goes back up after a kick. It's another one of those little noises. The hi-hat's also sampled with brushes with the same 6 degrees of openness. No mallets though, that just sounded too boomy on the open hats. So it might seem like we've just gone crazy sampling every possible aspect of this kit with all these sticking stuff on top of the snare and on controls, but we did actually exercise some reasonable restraint and at least one moment of sanity. Now, when we bought the kit, we got some cymbals thrown in. 2 East German Trova cymbals, which were half decent but not terribly interesting in sound, and that Palmas Hi-Hat I already mentioned. So we stacked them on top of each other and sampled them as a cymbal stack. So other than the bottom half of the hi-hat, the single drumstick that was rattling around the bottom of the kick drum, and the original snare wires, which we had to replace because they were broken, we literally used every part of our $111.68 Buffalo. Here's the stack. We also sampled good cymbals that were a match for the kit sonically. Here's the crash, which has hits, and like all the rest of the cymbals, chokes. The ride's really nice and also matches the kit visually, being from Sabian's Big and Ugly series. Yeah, it cost more than 4 times with the whole kit with stands and cymbals and everything did, but I don't care, it sounds right and even looks right. There's bow, edge, and bell hits. There's a big China crash. And for the last 2 pieces, we have 2 mysterious unlabeled cymbals. No idea what decade or country or metal alloy they are, but they have rivets which sizzle and they sounded great, so they also got sampled with bow, edge, and bell hits. Except for the stack, all the cymbals are also sampled with brushes. And mallets, which, like with the toms, are great for rolls. We also sampled the kick and hi-hat pedals without the actual kick drum and hi-hat cymbals, just getting stepped on and then returning to their proper position. These are Zygmunt Szpaderski's pedals, not as smooth or quiet in their operation as modern ones, though we did grease them enough to keep the squeaking down to a reasonable level. So there's that. Finally, in another rarely sampled thing, we did rim clicks and shell clicks on every drum, and also hits on the massive tom holder and on the hefty hi-hat shaft. These aren't just an afterthought, they have 4 round robins and 4 or 5 velocity layers, which might seem excessive, but they were fun. So those are the sounds with the default settings. Now to explain all these controls. The kick by default only has the kick out mic on. You can add in overheads. And there's a snare bottom mic for more sympathetic buzz. Then there's the punch control, which is the kick out mic transposed an octave up. It adds punch. It can also be used for the kick to retain clarity when tuned down. Tune the kick down a lot, use the punch to keep it clear enough, add in overheads, and then use the undampened kick samples for a big epic sound. The toms also have the snare bottom mic, which can be blended in. Being huge, they make the snare buzz a lot. The tune controls can go down or up an octave, except for the clicks tune, which goes from an octave down to 2 octaves up, because they sound really cool tuned very high. The snares got bottom, top, and overhead mics, and here they are separately. The snap is the bottom mic an octave up, punch is the top mic an octave up, and by the way, the toms also have punch. And epic is the overheads an octave down, for some awesome options that you couldn't do when recording a real drum part in the real world. The kick, toms, and snare also have this deaden control, which shortens the sound by applying an envelope all the way down to a short glitch. No effects, no processing, other than just mixing together the same 4 mics with various transpositions, and boom! The snare and 18-inch tom stirs have controls similar to a swirly drum kit with fade-in time, fade-out time, crossfade time, and 3 different envelope shapes, so they can be used for anything from slow, smooth stirs to short accented ones, and anything in between. The cymbals and hi-hat have dryness knobs, which are similar to the dead end on the shells, but less extreme. At max, the sound will fade out about twice as fast as in reality, which can be useful for keeping the wash from building up too much. Turn this up on the hi-hat to tuning up a bit. Use the close mic and the tightly closed hi-hat hits with the tip of the stick really tight and crisp, so you can even do trap hi-hat patterns in an organic way. And well, that's it. This isn't a kit that can do it all, but from lo-fi indie to dirty hip-hop, it sure can do a lot of things other kits can't. Head on over to Karoryfer.com to buy big rusty drums and also our swirly drums and Franken Snare, Secret Agent guitar, and download our free samples. Thanks for watching.